There are a ton of new decks emerging in the Marvel Snap meta right now. What can I say? It's a great time to be a Marvel Snap player. And today we're going to be talking about the top 10 best decks in Marvel Snap. So let's get started with deck number 1, Galactus and Alioth at a 58% win rate. This is by far the fastest meta riser in the meta right now. And it comes with a bit of a caveat because it makes me nervous. We know that Galactus, from Second Dinner's perspective, they don't want it to be the top meta card. They don't want it to be the most popular archetype because of how polarizing the card is. And here we are, an absolutely banger list that's the highest win rate Galactus has ever had. So I wonder if something happens here, but I gotta tell you, with Alioth, Galactus is fantastic. The deck feels great. It might be polarizing, but that doesn't mean it's not fantastic. Galactus and Alioth, number 1 this week, and number 2 is Doomed Evolutionary at one of the highest win rates you're going to see in Marvel Snap at 61%. I feel vindicated here because we've been talking about High Evolutionary for weeks about how people have been sleeping on it, and now it's roaring back in the meta with literally 3 times the meta share that it had 3 weeks ago. And so now what we have here is a deck that really performs well with Dr. Doom, and there's also other variations here. I'm seeing versions of this deck with Storm, because obviously Storm works well with Dr. Doom and Cyclops. I tend to prefer that version, but the meta right now is saying that they want the Cosmo because of the amount of Galactus you're seeing, which makes perfect sense because you don't want that damn Galactus to be dropping, and sometimes you can easily predict where it's going to go. So Doomed Evolutionary, a really solid deck. And then you have Loki Legion Collector. Believe it or not, at a 59% win rate, the deck is still good. There was a lot of people out there that were concerned that the nerf to Collector was going to kill Loki, but it didn't. Would you be surprised to know that it just killed every other deck that had Collector in it, but not the Loki edition? So Collector is basically a Loki card now, but it still performs great, which is a good thing to some degree because Loki's a fun card. There might be some more balance changes coming eventually because a 59% win rate on a season pass card is still really high, especially considering how massive the nerf to Collector really was. And then we have Alioth Ramp at a 57% win rate. This is the alternative version of the most popular Alioth based deck, and I like this deck a lot because what it offers you is multiple winning lines on turn 5 or 6. You could Dr. Doom Odin, you could Panther Zola, you could Doom Zola, you could Alioth Zola. There's so many different ways you can approach the game state here. It's a ton of fun to play, especially if you like masterclassing the last 2 turns of the game. And then again, literally one of the best decks in the meta right now, and again, catching in meta share. It's rising, and that's Shuri Sauron, 60%. And I mean, its play pattern is very straightforward. It's not an expensive deck. This version now includes Nebula, which is the latest inclusion and iteration of the deck. But what I will tell you is it just pilots so easily. It's so fun to play, and it really performs magnificently at a 60% win rate. So this is the best version of Shuri Sauron currently in the meta. Moving on, we have Silky Smooth at a 59% win rate. This deck is one of the ones that's falling in meta share, but its win rate is remaining relatively consistent. I want to include it here because it's one of those decks that still uses Legion, and it also still uses Captain Marvel, and its win rate's nuts. So I think people are sleeping on this. So if you want to catch some people by surprise, or if people are starting to tech in Luke Cages because of the amount of high evo they're seeing, play this deck. You'll probably catch them off guard yourself. And then what we got here is Loki Cat Collector. This is the latest edition of the Loki deck, utilizing Ghost Rider and Black Cat, which is a pretty interesting combination. And of course, you got Lady Sif and Helicarrier here, which is pretty wild, which of course buffs the Collector. And Loki, there's so many different ways to approach this deck. I really like it. It's a really neat version. Now, its win rate is slightly lower than the original Loki deck, probably because of its combo-centric nature, but also because it's brand new, and I think that people are still experimenting with its playstyle and figuring out its line. So you expect those types of decks that are very combo-centric to need some bit of like practice to actually gain in win rate. So this deck, a really cool addition to the current meta. I'm all for it. And then we have the classic She-Not, which is still performing really well. This is the Leech version of She-Not, which has been by far the most popular. A 59% win rate means that it is still consistently very strong. What helps this deck is the reduction of popularity of Legion after the nerf, and several of the Legion decks that were most popular are falling in popularity, and other decks like High Evo and stuff that are gaining in popularity in Galactus just simply don't run High Evolutionary, but don't run Legion. Just be very very wary of your limbo location being destroyed by Galactus. Okay, that is a major risk you have to kind of consider, but that's why you have Cosmo. And then we've got Sarah Shadow by co-host of the Snapchat podcast, Cozy Snap, and it's a fantastic deck utilizing Hitmonkey, a card that you just might have just pulled out of your Spotlight caches. Well, what I like about this deck here is it features not only the newly buffed Shadow King, but Luke Cage, which is a great answer to the current meta, with the High Evolutionary becoming increasingly more popular. This deck does slap. It has everything you need to be successful in both Conquest and on Ladder. Cozy designed an absolute banger, and I'll have a link to his video down in the description below. As we close it out, one thing I will say is if you find this content helpful, perhaps you consider subscribing. I don't say it very often in my videos, but YouTube's weird, and if you don't subscribe, there's a chance you don't see my updates and stuff like that, so I would appreciate it if you consider subscribing. Regardless, Destroy continues to be one of the absolute top tier decks in the meta. At a 56% win rate and a very high meta share, people just love Destroy. There's nothing fancy to say here. It's straight up Deadpool. It's been pretty much consistent since X23 came out. So with that being said, I got another video for you up on the screen here. If you're interested in seeing some more Marvel Snap content, I'd love if you check it out, and we'll see you on that next Marvel Snap video.